15 years ago, I was an obscure tobacco farmer in Pennsylvania. Today, I preside over one of the best advertising agencies in the United States, with billings of $55 million a year, a payroll of $5 million, and offices in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Toronto. How did this come to pass? As my Amish friends have said, it wonders me. On the day in 1948 when I hung out my shingle, I issued the following order of the day. This is a new agency, struggling for its life. For some time, we shall be overworked and underpaid. In hiring, the emphasis will be on youth. We are looking for young Turks. I have no use for toadies or hacks. I seek gentlemen with brains. Agencies are as big as they deserve to be. We are starting this one on a shoestring, but we are going to make it a great agency before 1960. The next day, I made a list of the 5 clients I wanted most. General Foods, Bristol-Myers, Campbell Soup Company, Lever Brothers, and Shell. When we started our agency, we placed ourselves in competition with 3,000 other agencies. Our first job was to escape the obscurity so that the prospective clients would add us to their shopping list. Following Henry Ford's advice to his dealers that they should solicit by personal visitation, I started by soliciting advertisers who did not employ an agency at all, figuring that I lacked the credentials to push any incumbent agency out of bed. At first, we took every account we could get: a toy tortoise, a patent hairbrush, an English motorcycle. But I always kept my eye on the list of 5 blue chip targets. These opening selections come from the book that I just finished reading, and it's called Confessions of an Advertising Man, and it was written by the advertising man himself, David Ogilvy. This book was written by David in 1962, and he says that when he wrote this book, he expected it to sell somewhere maybe around 4,000 copies or so. He also wrote it as a means to help attract new clients to his 14-year-old business, and then also attract attention to the public offering of the shares that he was about to put on the market for his company. And what happens here is he ends up selling more than 1 million copies of this book. Inside of it, we find an absolute master guide to advertising and business essentials by a deeply driven man that is 100% focused on his craft. It's pure focus. In fact, he says the following: I cannot read a balance sheet, work a computer, skate, ski, sail, play golf, or paint. But when it comes to advertising, Advertising Age, which is a leading magazine at the time, says that I am the creative king of advertising. When Fortune published an article about me entitled it, Is David Ogilvy a Genius?, I asked my lawyer to sue the editor for the question mark. 100% David Ogilvy is a genius at advertising. On the last episode, you and I, we looked at Steve Jobs, who loved Apple from the very first day he founded that business until he dies. Steve Jobs was to computers what David Ogilvy is to advertising. It just takes David a little bit longer than it did Steve to finally discover his true purpose in life. 17 years of wondering that includes working in a kitchen, banging doors to make sales, working in slums, conducting research on movies, and working on a tobacco farm. The drive was in Ogilvy the entire time, and it was like a dormant volcano. Every one of those 17 years turns out to be a potent ingredient for David. And before we get there, I just want to pay a little bit of credit. I first heard about Ogilvy probably 3 or 4 years ago now, and it was from David Senra in his Founders podcast. I think episode 82 was the book Ogilvy on Advertising, and then 89 was this book, Confessions of an Advertising Man. And I believe David has covered David Ogilvy multiple times on his podcast, and I'll link to those below. But that's how I heard about David Ogilvy. I highly recommend both episodes if you can listen to them. And on a personal note here, as a small business owner, aware of how advertising can certainly impact my business, I did the smart thing and I bought both books. From time to time, I would pick them up and I would thumb through the books, picking up little nuggets of wisdom here and there. But the time felt right to dive into Ogilvy, and I figured that I would start with his first book. And what I admire most is Ogilvy's deep love of advertising and his focus to understand his purpose in life and then take the mighty bold step to share it with you and I. He doesn't have to share it. He does. He doesn't lock it up in a vault. He's generous and he shares his wisdom with us and he shares it with the world. And I think he does that because he knows that he's only one of about maybe half a dozen people on the entire planet that is gifted at this level of advertising. He has the respect of those around him and he wants to put forward a universal way of thinking about advertising. And with a deep background in research that was more than 10 years, David's foundation is rock solid. Diving right into the heart of the book early, he sees four major problems with advertising. First, manufacturers aren't willing to develop a brand. They only care about moving products at volume. They do this by slashing prices to the bone. Sure, customers, they're willing to try a cheap product once, but they're always going to go back to their staple brands when that one dies off. By neglecting their brand building power, the easy road turns to shit over time. Ogilvy says, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. If you really love your business, respect your brand. Next, he says, in most agencies, the people working there, they've never sold anything. They're trying to win awards for their work. Advertising is not for winning awards. It's for selling products. Advertising is for selling products. This ingredient was learned from selling kitchen stoves door to door. The more you talk about your products and respect the customer, the more you sell. It's basic. It's real easy to say. It's much, much harder to do. Third thing here, megalomaniac owners of these ad agencies that are buying up all the small firms around them. They're trying to be the biggest and the most impressive firms, leaving creativity by the roadside like a used up old couch. And then the fourth thing here is that ad agencies waste their clients' money by making simple mistakes. David says, such as using like this white type on a black background. What his research shows and what he knows so well is that black type on white paper is easier to read and retain the attention. If we just think about it, all the books we read for the show are black letters on white pages. The foundation of everything for Ogilvy started for him as a researcher working for Dr. Gallup at Princeton. This is where he learns the nuts and bolts of advertising, how to build a solid foundation. But it takes David many years to arrive at the starting line. Along the way here, he's building a storehouse of valuable tools. He's building out his toolbox. And this gives him a special map of seeing how people buy and react to what is put directly in front of them. As a boy at the age of 9 years old, David, he's sent off to a boys' boarding school. His headmaster writes the following about David. He is distinctly original-minded, inclined to argue with his teacher and try to convince them that he is right and that books are wrong. But this perhaps is further proof of his originality. This originality lands him a scholarship at Oxford. But as a history student, he can't quite keep focus on his studies and he's expelled. But the truth is here, he wasn't. He flunked out. But look what he did with this simple fact right here. The greatest ad man of the century is advertising himself as being expelled. as someone interesting enough to be thrown out, not as someone who failed. Lesson here: pick the word that sells. For the next 17 years, he drifts, looking for his purpose in life. While my friends were establishing themselves as doctors, lawyers, civil servants, and politicians, I had ventured around the world, uncertain of purpose. I was a chef in Paris, a door-to-door salesman, a social worker in the Edinburgh slums, an associate of Dr. Gallup in research for the motion picture industry, and an assistant to Sir William Stevenson in the British Security Coordination, and a farmer in Pennsylvania. First stop on the train is as a chef at Hotel Majestic in Paris. It's anything but majestic work. There are 37 chefs in the kitchen, each one of them working 63 hours a week. From morning to night, we sweated and shouted and cursed and cooked. The goal: to be the best chef, not just for David, but for everyone. It's a pressure cooker. And inside of the pressure cooker was another pressure cooker to be the absolute best. Ogilvy, he looks up to the executive chef, Monsieur Pittard. He was the white hot flame to that pressure cooker. And what he learns from Chef Pittard inspires everything for the rest of his life. And he says it feeds directly into his ad agency. He was the best cook in the whole brigade, and he knew it. It was inspiring to work for a supreme master. Once a week, Chef Pittard would emerge from his office and do what he loved to do the most: cook. All 37 men on staff, they would gather around and watch him. Like a superhero on the flame, David learns a valuable lesson. Following Chef Pittard's example, I still write occasional ads myself to remind my brigade of copywriters that my hands have not lost its cunning. Plain and simple here: be in the trenches with your team and know your business from A to Z. Estee Lauder always said, showing is more important than telling. Show your team. Don't sit in the corner office. Be like Elon Musk, who's always on the factory floors and sleeping in the tent on the roof of the factory. Another lesson that young David learns: Pittard praised very seldom, but when he did, we were exalted to the skies. So one evening, David is helping prepare a meal for the president of France who was going to visit their restaurant. David, he's on frog leg duty. He looks over and he sees Chef Pittard standing right next to him, watching, looking. David, his knees are trembling. Pittard pulls his pencil out and signals to the entire staff to gather. He points to the frog legs and says, "That's how you do it." 5 words, for which Ogilvy says, I was his slave for life. Indeed he was. The lessons in later years read as follows. Today, I praise my staff as rarely as Pittard praised his chefs, in the hope that they too will appreciate it more than a steady gush of appreciations. The lessons just keep rolling from the book. Pittard did not tolerate incompetence. He knew it was demoralizing for professionals to work alongside incompetent amateurs. We saw this on the last episode with Steve Jobs. He didn't tolerate B and C level employees. He wanted to work with only the best. Soon after he returned to Apple, he cut more than 4,000 what he calls bozos. Those were the C-level players. He did not want those type of people in the organization. He cuts them. Chef Pittard, he teaches David this lesson very early in life, and it's one that he never forgets. Surround yourself with the best and hire the best that you can possibly find. This also feeds into the menu. One evening, David, he tells the waiter that they're out of plat du jour. That is simply the special of the day. I had to look that up to see what that even meant. It's the special of the day. And that was a promise to customers. Pittard almost fires David. He explodes on him and he goes frickin' berserk. And he says that in a great kitchen, one must always honor what is promised on the menu. If you run out, pick up the damn telephone and you find a competitor that is serving that exact same dish. You go buy it from the fucking competitor if you have to, and you serve it to the customer. Always keep your promise. In the advertising world, this translates into not delivering an ad or a commercial on the day that it's promised to a customer. Always keep promises. It's another one of those super simple things to say, so much more difficult to follow. Ogilvy takes it all to heart, like cleaning the kitchen. Twice a day, they scrub all the tables and the floors. 30 years later, I am a martinet in making my staff keep their offices ship shape. A messy office creates an atmosphere of sloppiness and leads to the disappearance of secret papers. Pressing forward, a sloppy plate of food leads to declining revenues. Chef Pitter liked to inspect every single plate that was going out to guests. He's strict on portion control, proper appearance, and most of all, food quality. If it doesn't match the picture in his mind, send it back for more work. For David, today, I inspect every campaign before it goes out to a client and send back many of them for more work. You and I can see very clearly here how learning in one profession translates into another. Another key thing here, like I had mentioned before, the chefs in the kitchen, they're working 63-hour weeks. Pittard, he's working 72-hour weeks. He was always there. Lead by example is what I wrote in my book next to that section. And one lesson that works everywhere, regardless of your industry, I guarantee this works everywhere. If you make yourself indispensable to a client, you'll never be fired. And just real briefly, the reason I say this works everywhere is based upon my experience as a small business owner. I have several employees who know exactly how to prepare meals for clients, and they've developed multi-year relationships with them. What David learns here, I can 100% tell you from a founder's perspective, is true. Make yourself indispensable to the client. These lessons form the foundation at Ogilvy's advertising agency. Once a year, he gathers his team together to make crystal clear what he expects from them and what they should expect from Ogilvy himself. In the book, for most chapters, David lays down his learnings in a numberless fashion. He says that it keeps readers engaged, pulling them forward as they're reading your material. See what you think as I run down the list here of his expectations. Number 1, I admire people who work hard, who bite the bullet. I dislike passengers who don't pull their weight on the boat. Number 2, I admire people with first-class brains, because you cannot run a great advertising agency without brainy people. Number 3, I have an inviolable rule against employing nepots and spouses because they breed politics. Whenever two of our people get married, one of them must depart. Number 4, I admire people who work with gusto. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, I beg you to find another job. Remember the Scottish proverb, be happy while you're living, for you're a long time dead. Number 5, I despise toadies who suck up to their bosses. They are generally the same people who bully their subordinates. Number 6, I admire self-confident professionals, the craftsmen who do their job with superlative excellence. Number 7, I admire people who hire subordinates who are good enough to succeed them. Number 8, I admire people who build up their subordinates because this is the only way we can promote from within the ranks. I detest having to go outside to fill important jobs, and I look forward to the day when that will never be necessary. Number 9, I admire people with gentle manners who treat other people as human beings. Number 10, I admire well-organized people who deliver their work on time. And then on the other side of the coin, David says, number 1, I try to be fair and firm, to make unpopular decisions without cowardice, to create an atmosphere of stability and to listen more than I talk. Number 2, I try to sustain the momentum of the agency. Number 3, I try to build the agency by landing new accounts. Number 4, I try to win confidence of our clients at the highest level. Number 5, I try to make sufficient profits to keep you all from penury in the old age. Number 6, I plan our policies far in the future. Number 7, I try to recruit people of the highest quality at all levels to build the hottest staff in the agency business. Number 8, I try to get the best out of every man and woman in the agency. These are the ground rules by which everyone works from. Like a chef spending hours and hours crafting a masterpiece of a meal for a handful of guests, or the president of France, Ogilvy only has 19 clients. Long ago, he had learned that the pursuit of excellence was more satisfying to him than the pursuit of having a big business or just money alone. Like we spoke about Steve Jobs on the last episode, when he returned to Apple, he slashed almost all of their products and he focused on just four quadrants so that they could be excellent. It's the exact same with Ogilvy. And like Steve Jobs, finding people who can create great ad campaigns is his absolute top priority. He wants those that have a deep drive, a fire inside. Therefore, he hires those people that are the nonconformists, the dissidents, and the rebels. Those are the talents that rise to the top. This is who David hires. As head of one of the largest ad agencies in the world, Ogilvy himself stays in the trenches, tossing dirt with the boys and making new ads. How does he do this? I am almost incapable of logical thought, but I have developed techniques for keeping open a telephone line to my unconscious in case that disorderly repository has anything to tell me. That's such a great way to describe it. Disorderly repository. That's how I feel too. But it's amazing what will flow in. Let's keep going here in the book. I take long baths. I garden. I go into the retreat among the Amish. I watch birds. I go for long walks in the country. And I take frequent vacations so that my brain can lie fallow. No golf, no cocktail parties, no tennis, no bridge, no concentration, only a bicycle. That reminds me a lot of Mickey Singer, who we covered on episode 23, who surrendered to the flow of life, keeping his unconscious open to what life presents in front of him. David, he's doing the same thing here. He's letting his mind go. While thus employed in doing nothing, I receive a constant stream of telegrams from my unconscious, and these become the raw material for my advertisements. But more is required: hard work, an open mind, and an ungovernable curiosity. This is something that I also practice myself, letting the mind be free, laying still and just seeing what comes in. And often I do this when I'm thinking of a problem that needs to be solved or new ways to conduct business. Sometimes I also use this on how to craft various podcasts that I create here for you and I, especially with a book that contains a lot of material or complex topics. Like David, I feel inspired by what comes in, and I'm often amazed at the output. And I would highly recommend giving that practice a try, even just 10 minutes. Just lay down, close your eyes, try not to think about anything, and just see what arrives. I think you'll be amazed. Now, if we move forward here a little bit, we're going to go into the chapter called How to Get Clients. Ogilvy, he takes some giant leaps here to win clients, and I believe that his telephone lines were absolutely open. They had to be. Just listen to this. In 1958, we were invited by Standard Oil of New Jersey to show them what kind of advertising we would run if they would hire us. 10 days later, I presented them with a hamper of 14 different campaigns, and we won the account. Next to luck, fertility and midnight oil are the best weapons to use hunting new business. When he has his eye on one of those 5 clients that was on his original hit list, The gloves come off. And this reminds me of a Estee Lauder a lot. Extreme persistency. The biggest account I ever got was Shell. The Shell people liked what we had done for Rolls-Royce well enough to include us on a list of agencies which they were considering. To each agency, they had sent a long and searching questionnaire. Now, as it so happens that I deploy the practice of selecting agencies by questionnaire, and I have consigned dozens of them to garbage cans. But I stayed up all night drafting answers to the Shell questionnaire. My answers were more candid than is customary, but I thought they would make a favorable impression on Max Burns, a fellow director of the New York Philharmonic, who was then president of Shell. The next morning, I learned that he had gone to England, so I flew to London and left a message at his hotel, saying that I wanted to see him. For 10 days, there was no reply. I had almost given up hope when my telephone operator reported that Mr. Burns wanted me to lunch with him on the following day. I had already engaged myself to lunch with the Secretary of State for Scotland, so I sent Burns the following signal. Mr. Ogilvy is having lunch with the Secretary of State for Scotland at the House of Commons. They would be delighted if you would join them. I was able to give Burns the gist of my answers to his questionnaire. Back in New York the next day, he introduced me to the man who was about to succeed him as president of Shell, the remarkable Dr. Monroe Spot. And I don't know if I said that right or not. 3 weeks later, Monty Spot telephoned to say that we had the account. Those years of slaving away in the kitchen, they paid off. Now, it might appear that David is trying to grow his agency to a massive scale and take on as many clients as he can possibly bite off. Quite the opposite, and I really admire what he does right here. My ambition is to add one new client every 2 years. Faster growth would force us to engage new staff faster than we could train them, and to divert too much of our best brain power from the service of our old clients to the difficult work involved in planning the first campaigns for new ones. That reminds me a lot of Harry Schneider, who was the founder of In-N-Out Burger, who only opened new restaurants when he had enough properly trained staff and cash to do so. He didn't do it because he wanted to get bigger. He did it as a way of honoring his employees who were ready to move up in the company. And also, he watched his cash. He only did it when he had enough cash. Slow and steady wins the race. David, he even has a list of criteria for his clients. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to paraphrase this list from the book because some of them are quite lengthy, but I think there's some absolute gems in here. First up, the product must be one which we would be proud to advertise. Second, I never accept an account unless I believe that we can do a conspicuously better job than the previous agency. When the New York Times asked us to do their advertising, I declined because I didn't think that we could produce better advertisements than the brilliant ones they had been running. I love the honesty right there. Number 3, I steer clear of products whose sales have been falling over a long period, because this almost always means that there is an intrinsic weakness in the product, or that the management of the company is incompetent. No amount of good advertising can make up for either of these deficiencies. Amen on that one. Number 4, it is important to find out whether the prospective client wants his agency to make a profit. Basically, that's saying that they don't work for free. They are also in business as well. Number 5, if the account is unlikely to be profitable, would it give you a chance to create remarkable advertising? We never made much profit on Guinness or Rolls-Royce, but they gave us a golden opportunities to demonstrate our creative excellence. There is no quicker way to put a new agency on the map. Number 6 here, the relationship between a manufacturer and his advertising agency is almost as intimate as the relationship between a patient and his doctor. Make sure that you can live happily with your prospective client before you accept his account. Number 7, I avoid clients for whom advertising is only a marginal factor in their marketing mix. They have an awkward tendency to raid their advertising appropriations whenever they need cash for other purposes. Number 8, I never take new products before they have emerged from the laboratory, unless they are included in a hamper with another product which has already reached national distribution. For this next one, it's kind of long. I wrote brilliant in my margin. Number 9, if you aspire to produce great advertising, never take associations as clients. Some years ago, we were invited to compete for the Rayon Manufacturers Association account. I duly presented myself at the headquarters and was ushered into the pompous committee room. Mr. Ogilvy, said the chairman, we are interviewing several agencies. You have exactly 15 minutes to plead your case. Then I will ring this bell, and the representative of the next agency, who is already waiting outside, will follow you. Before launching into my pitch, I asked 3 questions. How many of the end users for Rayon must be covered in your campaign? Answer: automobile tires, furnishing fabrics, industrial products, women's clothing, men's clothing. Question number 2. How much money is available? Answer: $600,000. Question 3. How many people must okay the advertisements? Answer: the 12 members of the committee representing 12 manufacturers. Ring the bell, I said, and walked out. Them's the conditions what prevail with almost all association accounts. Too many masters, too many objectives, too little money. Then I wrote brilliant again at the end. I wrote brilliant twice. All right, let's see. So point number 10 here. Sometimes a prospective client offers you business on a condition that you hire an individual whom he believes to be indispensable to the management of his agency. And David says that generally does not work out, but you should take due diligence and investigate that possibility to make sure that who you're bringing on board is an A-level player. Now, based upon all of these conditions, how can you make sure that a client fits? Ogilvy says, listen. It pays to listen more than you talk. There's one stratagem which seems to work in almost every case. Get the prospective client to do most of the talking. The more you listen, the wiser he thinks you are. And from Sam Walton's autobiography, Made in America, he says, great ideas come from everywhere if you just listen and look for them, and that you never know who's going to have one. Listen, listen, listen. It works for Sam and it works for David. As podcast lovers, it's going to work the exact same for you and I. Now, once you have a client, how do you keep them? David, he says that the average client jumps agencies once every 7 years, and losing a client is pure hell. First, you have to put your best brains on the client. Don't use it as a training ground for new hires. Clients can see that bullshit from a mile away. Give them the best brains that they deserve. Next, on the front lines, hire account executives who want to serve clients, not their egos. And then something really obvious here, avoid taking new clients that are known to jump ship every 2 or 3 years. Because if you think you can fix them, you're playing wrong. The next point I think is really critical. David says to know your client at all levels. So manager to manager, creative talent to creative talent, VP to VP. Have all levels proving that they're indispensable to the client. Make it sticky. One idea that I love here, and I always try to do this myself. I've always tried to sit on the same side of the table as my clients to see problems through their eyes. I buy shares in their company so that I can think like a member of their family. When I take a total view of their business, I am better able to give them sound advice. Along with buying shares, buy their products. Almost everything I consume is manufactured by one of my clients. My shirts are Hathaway. My candlesticks are Stubborn. My car is a Rolls Royce, and its tank is always full of Super Shell. I have my suits made by Sears Roebuck. At breakfast, I drink Maxwell House coffee or Tetley tea and eat 2 slices of Pepperidge Farm toast. I wash with Dove, deodorize with Ban, and light my pipe with a Zippo lighter. The list goes on here, but I think you get the idea. What about if you don't like the products? It's pretty simple. You don't work with them. Or if you lose confidence in the product, again, simple. Resign the account. How about when you make a mistake? Call it out quickly before anyone notices if possible. Don't blame others for your issue. Call out your mistakes and make sure that they're known. Clients respect this. It makes you feel human, and it shows them that you care about the work and that you care about their account. Then on the other side of the coin, we have the concept of how to be a good client. The overall lesson here is you get out what you put in. Now for this, Ogilvy, he lists out 15 bullet points, and I'm just going to pull a few of the most interesting ones out and talk about them. They're all in the book. There's a lot of detail around them, and I would highly recommend that you pick up a copy of this book if you possibly can. It is absolutely worth the $10 or $15 that you're going to pay for it. Now, when you're picking an agency, ask yourself the following. Do you like them? The people, that is. Is their work good? And what are the results that they've had for their clients, present and past? Who are their reference accounts? Are they genuine in their service, or are you dealing with a bunch of assholes? Trust your gut when it comes to the chemistry. If you don't, you're going to be in hell. He says the following. Don't compete with your agency on creative talent. This is what you're paying them for. And then keep them involved, especially when you're doing R&D. David gives an example in the book where a team of 100 scientists had spent more than 2 years making a new product. And with less than 30 days before product launch, he's pulled in and he's told to create a personality and a plan to launch the product. Guess what happens in these cases? Yep, they often fail. Next up, David, he says not to strain your advertising through too many levels. In simple terms, Ogilvy hates committees. Over and over in the book, he tells us about the evils of committees and how they kill creative spirit. It leads to shitty work. And he drives this home quite simply by saying, most of the campaigns which have built brands to fame and fortune have come from partnership of 2 men. And one maxim that I really love, search all the parks in your cities, you'll find no statues of committees. Speaking of direct client to agency relationships, if they're not doing good, let them know. Speak your mind. Speak it loud. Speak it clear. David says that most times the ad agency, they'll get your message and they'll clean up their act. This feeds into setting high standards. Make it crystal clear that you want home runs, not bases on balls, home runs. And how do you get home runs? By testing everything. Test your promise. Test your media. Test your headlines and your illustrations. Test the size of your advertisements. Test your frequency. Test your level of expenditure. Test your commercials. Never stop testing and your advertising will never stop improving. I see testing as practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to be. Now that we have the agency-client relationship locked up, we can talk about building those home runs. These are the great campaign basics. The 101. What David shares with you and I are based on his time rooted in research. Mostly working for Dr. Gallup for almost 10 years, he was doing audience research in the motion picture industry, testing which stars, story arcs, and titles the public actually wanted to see. Ogilvy says that he conducted something like 400 surveys all across the country. He was, in effect, being paid to find out what ordinary Americans liked and why, one doorstep at a time. And at its true heart, a good advertising is one that sells products without drawing attention to itself. Instead of the reader saying, "Wow, what a clever ad that was," they should say, "I never knew that before. I must try this product." Now, something from the book that really opened my eyes here and it made me think different. Each day when I go out and I get my mail, it's full of junk or mail order ads. Ogilvy, he talks about this type of media a lot in the book. In the early 60s, this was really cutting edge stuff. Today, we just call it junk. But one concept here, this really opens my mind. For 27 years, I have kept my eyes riveted on what mail order advertisers do in their ads. And from this observation, I have crystallized some general principles that can be applied, I believe, to all kinds of advertising. I see this as Sam Walton visiting his competitor's store. Ogilvy is doing the same. In those very last four words, all kinds of advertising. This is what made me change my mind on something. Instead of seeing that daily mail as a junk mail run, I now see it as a learning run. And I really had to shift my thinking on this. And I don't think I would have ever gotten here if it weren't for this book. And here's how I'm now viewing it. I look at those ads and I look at how they're set up. Bold letters with the headline. Ogilvy, he says, to spend 80% of your time writing the headline. 5 times as many people read that headline. I see a lot of copy. It's loaded with facts and figures. If you can pull them in with the headline, give them exactly what they need in the copy. Give them the facts. Catchy words like new, save, limited time. A lot of these ads have QR codes so that you can learn more now. They have bright pictures of the subject. Some of them have testimonials from local customers, or sometimes I see local athletes that are being used to help promote a product. All of these elements, they feed directly into what you and I are doing. It can be our online advertising, building our websites, our local ads, basically anything. There's so much to learn right from our own junk mail run, or what I now think of as a learning mail run. It's a complete mind shift for me. And if you're listening, I hope maybe you'll just stop and think about that for a second and see if maybe you can shift your mind on that just a little bit. Look at that mail run as a learning opportunity. Think about Sam Walton walking into his competitors' stores, learning it as much as he possibly can. We can do the same thing right from our own mailbox. Ogilvy, he goes on to list out his research-based rules. And what I'll do here is I'm going to go through and talk about a few of the most important ones that can help you and I. First, what you say is more important than how you say it. From the book here. Your most important job is to decide what you are going to say about your product and what benefits you are going to promise. And then, most importantly, keep it. Next up, give facts. People want facts, and this comes from David's time selling stoves door to door. When I was a door-to-door salesman, I discovered that the more information I gave about my product, the more I sold. Claude Hopkins made the same discovery about advertising 50 years ago. Then to drive it home here, The consumer isn't a moron. She is your wife. You insult her intelligence if you assume that a mere slogan and a few vapid adjectives will persuade her to buy anything. She wants all the information you can give her. Along with this, you mustn't bore your customer. Give them ads that they want to read. And one maxim that I love from David, he says, you can't save souls in an empty church. Make your voice heard. Stand out, save souls, and sell products. Again, David brings up committees. He really has a sour taste for them, saying nothing good comes from them. The best campaigns come from one or two dedicated, deeply driven individuals. Moving on, this one, another rule that I love. If you write a good ad that sells, repeat it until it stops selling. To drive it home, he says the following: 3 million consumers get married every year. The advertisement which sold a refrigerator to those who got married last year will probably be just as successful with those who get married next year. And then we pile on the fact 1,700,000 consumers die every year, and 4 million new ones are born. You aren't advertising to a standing army, you're advertising to a moving parade. In the foreword of the book, David says that the Dove campaign, with the words, "Dove doesn't dry your skin the way soap can," has been running for 31 years, sale after sale. It's all about the moving parade. Those 3 million couples that got married this year, they aren't getting married again next year. Your ad will continue to work. On your float, you should build honest advertising. Never put something out that you don't want your family to read. I think about that a lot when I do the podcast, to always put out an episode that I would be happy to have my family and friends listen to. Do as you would be done to. Be honest. The moving parade, it has x-ray vision, and it can tell if your product is good or bad, and they can do it quickly. Now in the book here, there's one final chapter that I wanted to talk to you about today. It's called How to Rise to the Top of the Tree, Advice for Young. And I see this as good advice for anyone, because the marching parade, it's full of people from all ages and all walks of life. The most important thing is to be ambitious. You can do this by diving in deep to your client's business, or your own business for that fact. Set yourself to becoming the best informed man in the agency on the account to which you are assigned. If, for example, it is a gasoline account, read textbooks on the chemistry, geology, and distribution of petroleum products. Read all the trade journals in the field. Read all the research reports and marketing plans that your agency has ever written on the product. Spend Saturday mornings in service stations, pumping gasoline and talking to motorists. Visit your clients' refineries and research laboratories. Study the advertising of his competitors. At the end of your second year, you will know more about gasoline than your boss. You will be ready to succeed him. That goes right back to making yourself indispensable, especially today. We have almost unlimited knowledge that's available to us. Charlie Munger, he says that for his whole life, he's never known any wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. Famous advertiser Claude Hopkins said that he was successful because he worked twice as long. When you work twice as long, what do? You climb the ladder twice as fast. Managers promote those that produce. We should always stay curious, my friend. Think different. I have to say, this is a fun book to read, and I highly recommend it. I hope that you can pick up a copy for your library. This really is a valuable lesson guide that you can use to develop your advertising and understand the advertising industry It's also packed with brilliant business advice that you can use in your day-to-day work. If you use the link in the show notes to buy the book, you'll be helping to support children's literacy, as I donate 100% of all the affiliate revenue from Amazon. And as we close down the episode today, what I wanted to do here is just read a list at the very back of the book. It's called A Collection of Ogilvyisms, and this is another list format. I'm just going to go down and read them for you. I think there's some good ones in here, and I think this is a good way to close the show. I believe in the Scottish proverb, hard work never killed a man. Men die of boredom, psychological conflict, and disease. They do not die from hard work. I agree 100%. It is important to admit your mistakes and do so before you are charged with them. Big ideas are usually simple ideas. Get rid of sad dogs who spread doom. In the best establishments, promises are always kept, whatever it may cost in agony and overtime. Change is our lifeblood. Tell the truth, but make the truth fascinating. Interesting. That's kind of like being expelled versus failing out of school. People do not buy from bad-mannered liars. Tolerate genius. It is a mistake to use highfalutin language when you advertise to uneducated people. I once used the word obsolete in a headline only to discover that 33% of housewives had no idea what it meant. In another headline, I had used the word ineffable only to discover I didn't know what it meant myself. No manufacturer ever complained that his advertising was selling too much. We prefer the discipline of knowledge to the anarchy of ignorance. And the last one, probably my most favorite, I admire people with gentle manners who treat other people as human beings. Until next time, my friend, make it a beautiful day in the neighborhood.